How many of you have ever gone looking for something and it's not where you thought it was at? Even though you know you left it right here? And it seems like it always works out. It's like the third time around, looking, going back through saying, let me retrace my steps. I was here, then I was here, then I was here, and I was back here, and this is where they should be. And about the third time around, you come back, and lo and behold, they're right where you left them. Anybody else have that thing? And you think, how did I miss them? Because it's the third time, and I've been looking the whole time? Now, I don't know how it works for you. I had this just happen. Typically, it happens for me when I'm looking for my keys, and I'm late getting someplace. And I'm trying to find them, and I've just, in fact, it just happened yesterday. I was at my house, couldn't find something, and as a pastor, you know what I said? Honey, where's the keys at? Because I'm married. And if I can't find it, my wife probably knows where it's at. And she always says, did you check here? Did you check there? Yes. Oh, didn't check there, and there they're at. One of the things that this church has been waiting for is for me to arrive to cast this great, wonderful, huge vision of where we're going in the future. And for the rest of this month, we're going to talk about where we're going in the future. But I want you to know this morning that where we're going has been in plain sight all along. See, because it would be foolish for me to come in and say, we're going to do things totally different in here. We're going to stop this, we're going to stop that, we're going to start this, going to start that. Everything's going to change. It would be foolish. Because this church has been successful. And only a dummy changes things that have been successful. And I ain't no dummy. Now, I may not be the brightest kid on the block, but I'm no dummy, all right? I'm a good, solid D and C student, all right? But I will let you know, one time when Rick and I were in graduate school together, one quarter, my best friend and I said, this quarter, we are going to get straight A's. For once in our life, we're going to show that we can do it. And you know what we did? We did it. Yay, that's good. I mean, straight A's for me was astronomical. Of course, that was the last quarter I ever got straight A's because I didn't want to work that hard. I had much better things to do with life. But I'm no dummy. But I want us again to reaffirm. We're going to spend this month reaffirming what New Hope is about and what New Hope is going to continue to be about and the things we may do a little tweaking difference. But I want you to know it's been in plain sight this whole time. So all of you waiting for me to ride in like the Lone Ranger or like Superman or like somebody who's going to change everything, I'm going to disappoint you, okay? But I do want to reaffirm what God has already been doing in your midst. And what I believe God will continue to do in our midst as we together live out the vision that he's given us. So before we kind of get into it this morning, I want to invite you just to bow your heads for a moment and pray with me, all right? Father, I thank you again for this church. Because this church is not just a building. It is a group. It is a community of people who have given so much of their time and of their energy, of their love, of their care, even of their frustrations and struggles, to try to make this what you would want us to be here. And Father, I would just ask that you would just help us to have our hearts open again and be reminded again that you have been present, and that you are present, and that you will be present as long as we keep step with you and where you're trying to lead us. So we simply want to say this morning, whether we've been here a long time or whether this is our first time, whether we're even kind of trying to figure this whole Christianity thing out, just at this moment we want to be open and say, lead us. Lead us, Father, in your name. Amen. Jesus one time, in John chapter 8:12, said these words, I am the light of the world. And if you know much about the culture in which Jesus says this, it's much more than just a light bulb like we have today, because they didn't have light bulbs back then. And it was much more than just looking at the sun, because it was really referring back to when God brings the children of Israel out of Egypt all the way to the promised land. And there was this light at night and this cloud during the day. You remember that? And that's what Jesus is referring to. When he says, I am the light of the world, that's the idea that he's reflecting here. I'm the presence of God here, to shelter you from the heat when it gets too hot, and to be that light at night that you need to warm you up, to guide you. As that cloud guided them, I'm here to be the guide. In fact, he goes on and says, if you follow me, you won't be stumbling through the darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. Now, I don't know what your story has been, but I can tell you that has been the story of my life. If you were here a few weeks or months ago, I forget how long it was, when I was here and I kind of told my story, I grew up in a great home. It was a very moral home. It was a civic-minded home. You do the right thing. You help people out. You don't give your family a bad name. But it was devoid intentionally by my parents, devoid of any religion. And it wasn't until my early 20s, as I kind of had some life issues going on and some choices I made that weren't the best and some choices I thought were pretty good that kind of fell flat, that I opened myself up to this idea that I was stumbling through some darkness. But then Jesus got a hold of my life. And this idea that a light that leads to life, my life is so much better today than it would have been without Jesus. And if that hasn't been the case in your life, I want to encourage you just to keep giving him that opportunity in your life. To not see it so much as a struggle about choices or about things you're doing, but to see it just simply as him saying, I can make a huge difference in your life. Because that's why Jesus came. And so if you're here this morning and kind of struggling with this whole thing we call faith or religion or Christianity, I want to encourage you to give God a little room. And if you want to talk about it, myself or Pastor Ann or Pastor Dave would love to have an opportunity to talk to you about that. But at this point in the service, I'm not talking to you anymore. Because the rest of the service, I want to talk to the people that have been part of New Hope, who have made this their church home, whether by officially or who come here all the time. That's what I want to talk about. Because if you go to our website, you'll see this listed there, our vision statement. And the vision statement simply says, to be an irresistible influence in our community. Period. That's what New Hope is about. To be an irresistible influence in our community. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first read that, I thought, what a stupid vision statement. Because how can you be an irresistible influence? I mean, I've known lots of people. I've known some great people, but even the greatest people I've known, the most friendly, the most, warm people, there are certain people that just kind of go, I don't want to be around that person. I don't like that person. So we can't make ourselves an irresistible influence. But as I sat back and thought, no, Mike, they must have had some really good thought about this. They must have prayed about it. They must have been really worked this through. That I think the intent is not that we're going to be this, but that we're going to try to be this. That our goal is to be an influence in our community, but not just an influence, but an irresistible, one that draws people to us, not one that pushes people away. And as I was thinking about it, there's only one element in my life that I can think of on top of my head that for me is an irresistible influence. And it's about this big, about that big around, and it goes in my freezer. My wife blessed me by bringing some home yesterday, but the problem with her bringing it home yesterday is that it will not last the weekend. In fact, it will probably not last the day. It's Ben & Jerry's New York Super Fudge Chocolate. And for me, it is an irresistible influence in my life. And I'm not joking about this. I've always prided myself on having a pretty good amount of self-will and of, willpower and all that kind of stuff. But I tell you, when it comes to Ben & Jerry's New York Super Fudge Chunk Chocolate, if it's in the house, if it's around my house, I'm going to eat it. And I typically tell myself I'm only going to eat half of it. But lo and behold, as I'm eating half of it, you know what I discover? I'm past the halfway mark. And if you can't have half a pint of Ben & Jerry's left, you might as well eat the whole thing, right? And it is literally one of those things that I cannot do. In fact, when my boys were small, I would buy the cheap ice cream, and I had the Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And I knew how much I'd eaten out of that pint. And I would come home from some board meeting or some other meeting or something. I was stressed out and tired, and I'd go to the freezer, I'd open it up, I'd reach in for my Ben & Jerry's and go, it's pretty light. So I had to figure out ways to disguise it, put bags of broccoli over the top of it or stuff, put it away in the back. For some reason, my boys found it as an irresistible influence as well. And the only reason I tell you that is that in my mind, that's really what this is about. Being that kind of thing that people long for, people look for. And it's not just a church building. It's not just a place. It is wherever you find yourself. Because that's what the church is. The church is not a building. You know that as well as I do because you've had at least 2, if not 3 different buildings around this place. The church is really what's sitting in the spot you're sitting at today. And here's the crazy thing. Jesus said, I am the light of the world, right? But I want you to notice what he also said. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Now, I notice he doesn't say, you need to try to be the light of the world. You need to strive to shine. He doesn't say that, does he? He simply says, you, the person sitting next to you, the person sitting in front of you and behind you, the person who sits over here because you sit over here to keep a good enough distance so you can both come to church together. That person, and also the person who happens to be occupying the exact spot you were sitting at today. You are the light of the world. Now, I don't know about you, that in my mind is a crazy statement for Jesus to make. How could we be the light of the world? I mean, Jesus is the light of the world. He said it. How could he say that we're the light of the world? Somebody say, I am. I am the light of the world. In fact, I want you to write that down. Now, that's not an earth-shattering statement, because you've probably heard it before if you've been around church before. But it ought to be an earth-shattering statement, because you know who you are. You know what your life's like, right? And the audacity for Jesus to say, you, and me are the light of the world. Period. We're it. And see, that's true whether I believe it or not. And it's true simply because Jesus is not a liar. And Jesus says, you're the light of the world, and you're the light of the world, and you back there just coming in the light of the world. The one who went out to the bathroom, we'll remind him when he comes back in, he was the light of the world too, all right? It doesn't matter where I believe or not. Jesus says that's the reality. It's not a choice I make. If you are a follower of Jesus, you are the light of the world. And you may be sitting there thinking, Mike, my life is busy, it's hurried, it's distracted. I am just simply trying to survive. Anybody with me on that? I mean, how can I be the light of the world? I got so much other stuff going on. I don't have time to stop and think and consider about, I'm meeting Rick today, I'm meeting Jose today, I'm meeting Ann today. How can I be the light in their life, you know? I'm just trying to get through the day. But the reality is we have failed as God's children to be light. True? Well, it's getting quiet in here all of a sudden. We have failed, haven't we? I have failed. I know as shocking as that is. I know Rick has failed. And he gets paid to be better than I am. Which is hard to imagine. And the truth is, we are more me-focused than he-focused, right? At our core, we're honest. Now, our issue is not sin. Our issue is selfishness, because that's the core of every sin. And life happens, and we get sucked into it, and we get me-focused because we got to be me-focused because nobody else is me-focused, and if you're not me-focused, somebody has to take care of me, right? And we become more me-focused than he-focused. But check this out. And yet, in the reality of all that, Jesus says, we are. In the reality of messed up lives, of mixed up lives, of confused lives, of lives that go in so many different directions we don't have time to stop and think and to consider. In the midst of all that, in the reality of all that, Jesus says, you are. You are the light of the world. That is a scary thought, isn't it? When I look around, there's a few of you I've met already. As I think about that, that's a scary thought. The more you get to know me, the more you're going to consider that even a scarier thought. But here's something else I want you to write down. Not only are we the light of the world, we're the hope of the world. Bill Hybels, who's a pastor at a really large church over in the Chicago area, oftentimes talks about the church being the hope of the world. And there's a reason he says that, and there's a reason I think we can make that same assertion. That we are the hope of the world because we're it. We're the light of the world. We're God's men and women, boys and girls. We're His presence here on this planet, right? Jesus is not walking around any longer. He's not over in Israel. He's not over in Chicago. He's not in downtown D.C. We're it. But here's the important thing. If we get this right, if we get this thing of church right, we will change the world. If we get this right. And one of the reasons I'm thrilled to be at New Hope, it's a church very much like my last church. You are an abnormal church. And I'm thrilled to be a pastor of an abnormal church. Because I pastor a lot of normal churches, and I'm glad not to be part of those anymore. You are abnormal because you're normal biblically. And the average church in America, and I've pastored some of them, and I'm not just talking about Adventist churches, I have friends that pastor all sorts of churches. The average church, normal church in North America, is abnormal biblically. Because all they care about is me and taking care of myself and keeping people safe. And they have concluded that salvation is all about me getting to heaven. Folks, salvation is not about you or me getting to heaven. Jesus has taken care of that. My job now is to help others experience that same gift of salvation, that same security of salvation that's found in Jesus alone. And as I keep saying yes to Jesus, everything's going to be fine. And if we get this right, because we are abnormal, because we care about the community more than ourselves, we care about our neighbors more than ourselves, even the guy who lets his dog do his business in our yard. But I believe this with all my heart, that if we can get this right, we can change this world. Even if it's only one person, but it's going to be more than one person. But if we don't get this right, there's a huge amount at stake. In fact, Jesus says it this way. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, it is what? No longer good for anything. We're the salt of the earth. In fact, the word saltiness there in the original language, it's this idea that something is sort of a fool that plays this part. It fools you. It's the idea that you take out your salt shaker, you put it all over your steak or your veggie steak, and you go to eat it, and there's no salt there. It's played you for a fool. You thought it was going to be salty, and there's nothing there. And Jesus says if we play the part and there's nothing there, we're not good for anything. And I don't want Jesus to say that about me, and I don't want him to say that about our church, that we're not good for anything. See, here's the scary thing about all this. There is no plan B. We're it. There is no plan B. And I don't know if you're thinking the same thing I am. The thing I'm thinking is, this is not the way I would do it, God. I would pick a whole lot better group of people. And I don't even know you all that well, but I can tell you I'd pick a whole lot group of better people. You would as well, wouldn't you? Because I would do this a whole different way. I would not bank everything on messed up, mixed up, hopeless people. I'd want people who had their act together, who were smarter than me, smart like Pastor Newman. I want people to have energy like Pastor Ann, you know? I want people like some of you have good hair, you know? I mean, I'd pick the best, the brightest, the best look. I'd have the models. I'd have those are the people you want taking care of business. But God has never chosen those kind of people. Read your Bible. Every person you come across, half the time, I don't want anything to do with this God. You're it. The disciples. I mean, I love the gospel stories if you read behind it. James and John, these two brothers who become two of Jesus' key disciples. Remember what any of you remember what their nickname, what they were called by? Sons of Thunder, right? Now you read the book of Gospel of John, you think, oh, John's this kind of easygoing, laid-back kind of guy. But you don't get the name Sons of Thunder by being this easygoing, laid-back guy, right? You know, you got your leather jacket on. You know, you roll in on your camel, you know, you plop back there, you know. You know, you come to town, everybody knows the Sons of Thunder have come to town, right? Those are the kind of people that Jesus intentionally chose, which tells me why it's so important that you and I know that there is no plan B. And that's a scary thought. But the great news is there is a plan. That we are the light of the world, that we are the hope of the world. And here's what Jesus says in that same passage. He says, listen, let your light shine before men so that they can see your good deeds, see the good stuff you do. And in turn, praise your Father in heaven. Now, I didn't do a checkup on the Greek here to know how this kind of works, whether by letting our light shine and we're the ones praising heaven, or other people praise because of the stuff we do. That's typically how we say it. But it really doesn't matter which way you go because both are important. See, we ought to do good stuff for other people simply because we ought to do good stuff for other people. Not because they might become a Christian, not because they might join us at church, not because they might study the Bible, not because of anything other than simply because that's what we're here for. Our job is simply to let our light shine. Not to try to make it shine, but just simply to let it shine. To let the Jesus that is in your life come out. And I will tell you that when we get serious about doing that, that is one of the most scary but most freeing things that you can experience. And we're going to get there, but not today, all right? Because I'm running out of time. So here's what I want to do. Here's just a challenge I want to close with today. Everybody say, I will. I will. Raise your right hand, maybe. I say, I will. All right, there we go. I want to walk you through three things real quickly. First of all, I'm going to challenge you to commit to saying, I will do everything to reach those without Jesus. That's going to be our challenge, to do everything. And you notice I put a little statement down there, Rick. It's short of sinning, so we're all okay there, right? But folks, we literally have to be willing to do everything. Everything to reach those without Jesus. We can't say we've always done it this way, or we can't do that. The only thing we can't do is sin in the process. So we're not going to set up, some strip club for Jesus. Okay, we're fine on that. But we may set up some other things, right? Because we have to meet people where they're at. We can't expect everybody to keep coming here, right? Second thing, I will accomplish more together than alone. We're going to talk about this next week a little more, about a couple of ideas I have for us being that irresistible influence in this community. So come next week, otherwise you'll miss it, all right? In fact, Jesus, Matthew chapter 5, when he says, you are the light of the world, the word there is plural, so it's not singular, you, but it's you together are the light of the world. And that ought to be good news. Because then it's not all up to me. Oops. Nothing to look at, Collier. It's us together. So it isn't all up to me to be the only light shining in this person's life. I just let my light shine, somebody else's light shine. All the lights together are what makes it happen. And that's an important thing for a church to know. Because at times you're going to feel like I'm all alone in this. I'm the only one that cares about this ministry. I'm the one that's doing this. And it may be true at that moment. But never forget that what you're doing in one spot is helping us do other things in other spots. Here's the third point. I will make a difference because that's our job. If we're not making a difference, we're just sucking up oxygen. We're here to make a difference because we have the most important job left for us to do. And you may have a very important job. Some of you are brain surgeons, maybe rocket scientists. Any rocket scientists here today? Man, I was hoping to get a rocket scientist. Okay. But you may have some jobs you think are really important. And I'm not dissuading that those aren't important jobs. But if you are a believer in Jesus, if you are a follower of Jesus, your most important job is to be what Jesus says you are. And you are the light of the world. So let me close with this great passage from Ephesians chapter 3. It's kind of a blessing that Paul puts on there. In fact, let's read this out loud together, all right? Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. I'm going to read that. Let's read that again, all right? Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. I don't want it to go forward. Put it back. I know what I'm doing here. One more time. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. Thank you. That's an incredible statement, isn't it? To him who is able to do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. That's incredible. Because I can ask some great things, I can imagine some great things, and he can do not just more, he can do immeasurably more. For you in your own individual life, and for us as a church, who are the light of the world together, who are the hope of the world together, according to his power that is worked within us. That's where the light comes from. And he says, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. And they said, Amen. Somebody say, I am. I am. Say it again. One more time. That's important because you are. And God has everything writing on that. So I just challenge you as we close today to be who Jesus says you are. The light of the world. The hope of the world. And together we're going to have a great time together. Thank you.